My mother exploited my college fund for years, even stealing from my grandmother's legacy. When I found the texts detailing her lies, I exposed her spending with timestamps and bank statements, costing her the marriage and family. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. Sometimes you don't realize how toxic a situation has become until you're finally out of it, looking back at the wreckage. This is the story of how I discovered my mother had been systematically stealing from my college fund for years, and how standing up to her manipulation changed everything about my life and my understanding of family. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when my world shifted completely. I was 22, finishing my senior year at State University, and meeting with my financial aid counselor about graduate school applications. Mrs. Rodriguez had been helping students navigate financial aid for over 15 years, and she had this way of making even the most stressful money conversations feel manageable. But when she pulled up my account information that day, her usual warm smile faded into a concerned frown. "Marcus, there seems to be an issue with your education savings account. The balance shows significantly less than what your mother indicated on your FAFSA applications." My stomach dropped like I'd just stepped off a cliff. "What do you mean?" She turned the monitor toward me, and I found myself staring at numbers that made no sense. The account that was supposed to have $47,000 for my final semester in graduate school showed $3,200. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I was misreading the screen, but the numbers didn't change. "There have been regular withdrawals over the past 3 years," Mrs. Rodriguez continued gently, her voice taking on that careful tone people use when they're delivering bad news. "Large amounts. $2,000 here, $3,500 there. The most recent was last month for $4,200. I felt like I was going to throw up. That money represented so much more than just numbers on a screen. It was years of my father's overtime shifts at the manufacturing plant, coming home exhausted and covered in grease, but always saying it was worth it for my future. It was my grandmother's birthday checks, carefully saved and deposited with notes about how proud she was of my grades. It was my own summer job savings that I'd contributed since I was 16, working at the local hardware store and putting away every dollar I could spare. "Can you print out the transaction history?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She handed me 4 pages of withdrawals, and as I scanned them, a pattern began to emerge that made my blood run cold. Every few months, sometimes more frequently, money disappeared from my account. The withdrawals always happened during the school year when I was away at college, and they always seemed to coincide with my mother's shopping sprees or her mysterious, emergency expenses that she never quite explained in detail. That night, I called my dad from my dorm room. He was working late at the plant again, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice mixed with the background noise of machinery. My father had been working at the same manufacturing job for 23 years, and he'd been pulling overtime shifts for the past 5 just to make sure I could go to college without debt. "Dad, I need to ask you something about my college fund." "What about it, son?" There was immediate concern in his voice. My father wasn't the type to worry unnecessarily, but money conversations always made him tense. "How much should be in there right now?" He paused, and I could hear him thinking. "Well, let's see. Between what your grandma left you when she passed, what we've been putting in since you were little, and your summer job money over the years should be close to 50,000. Why? Is there a problem with financial aid?" I told him about the meeting with Mrs. Rodriguez, reading him the numbers from the printout. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel his confusion and growing anger through the phone. "Marcus, that money was in a joint account with your mother so she could help you with expenses if needed, but we never discussed any major withdrawals. I thought every penny was still there. Dad, there's only 3,000 left." The sound he made was somewhere between a gasp and a growl. "I'm coming to get you. We're going to sort this out right now." "No, Dad, let me handle this first. I need to understand what's been happening." But even as I said it, I was starting to understand. All those times my mother had mentioned needing money for emergencies that never seemed to materialize into actual crises. All those shopping trips where she'd come home with expensive items but claimed they were on sale or practically free. All those times she'd been evasive when I asked about the college fund, saying it was all taken care of, without giving specifics. I spent the next 2 weeks becoming a detective in my own life, and what I discovered made me physically sick. I cross-referenced the withdrawal dates with my mother's social media posts, her credit card statements that I could access through our shared family account, and conversations I remembered having with her about money over the years. The pattern was absolutely sickening. Every single withdrawal corresponded with something my mother wanted, but couldn't afford on her salary as a part-time dental receptionist. The $2,800 withdrawal in September 2019 matched exactly with her girls' trip to Cancun that she said she'd saved for over months. I remembered her posting photos from the resort, talking about how she deserved this vacation after working so hard. The $3,200 withdrawal in January 2020 happened 3 days before she bought the designer handbag collection she claimed was an investment in quality pieces that would last forever. The most damning evidence came from her text messages. My mother had always been careless with her phone, leaving it unlocked around the house during winter break. I'd never snooped before, but something made me look this time. What I found were conversations with her sister, my Aunt Linda, that made my blood boil and my heart break at the same time. Linda, I had to borrow from Marcus's college fund again. Just $1,500 this time. Deanne, you can't keep doing this, that's his future you're stealing. He'll never know, I'll pay it back before he graduates, besides he's getting good grades, he'll probably get scholarships for grad school anyway. You said that last time and the time before that. It's not like he's struggling, he has his part-time job at school and David gives him spending money. I'm his mother, I deserve to live a little too. I've sacrificed everything for that boy. I screenshot everything with shaking hands. Bank statements, text messages, social media posts showing her purchases with timestamps that match the withdrawals. I created a detailed timeline that showed exactly how $44,000 of my future had been systematically stolen to fund her lifestyle, her wants, her complete disregard for my education and dreams. Spring break came, and I drove home with a folder full of evidence and a heart full of rage mixed with devastating sadness. I kept thinking about all the times I'd thanked her for managing my college fund, all the times I'd felt grateful that I didn't have to worry about money for school. I'd been thanking her for stealing from me. My mother was in her element when I walked in, showing off her latest purchases to my Aunt Linda. She was practically glowing with excitement, the way she always got when she had new things to display. Marcus, you're home early, look what I found at the outlet mall. She held up a designer purse that I recognized from my research. It had cost $1,200 and she'd bought it the same week she'd withdrawn $1,500 from my account. Mom, we need to talk. Privately. Aunt Linda excused herself quickly, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew what was coming, had probably been dreading this conversation for months. I sat across from my mother at the kitchen table where she'd helped me with homework for years, where we'd eaten countless family dinners, where she'd promised me over and over that my college fund would always be there for my future. The irony wasn't lost on me. I know about the money. Her face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like calculation, and finally defiance. What money? My college fund, the $44,000 you've stolen over the past 3 years. Stolen? Marcus, that's a very strong word. I'm your mother. I've been managing your finances since you were born. I think I know what's best for our family's money. Managing? Is that what you call it? I spread the bank statements across the table like evidence in a courtroom. March 15, 2020, $2,800 withdrawal, same day you posted photos from Cancun. June 3, 2020, $1,900 withdrawal, same week you bought that jewelry set you told Dad was a gift from your sister. Her face was getting red, and I could see her trying to formulate excuses. You have no right to go through my personal business. Those statements are private. Your personal business, this is my money. Money that Dad worked double shifts to save. Money that Grandma left specifically for my education before she died. Money that I contributed from every summer job I've ever had. I raised you for 18 years. Fed you, clothed you, drove you to every practice and game and school event. You think that was free? You think I didn't sacrifice anything for you? The audacity was absolutely breathtaking. So you decided to charge me retroactively by stealing my college fund. You decided to bill me for being my mother. I didn't steal anything. I'm your mother. Everything I have is yours and everything you have is mine. That's how families work. That's how it's always worked. No, Mom, that's how theft works. That's how financial abuse works. She stood up, her voice rising to that pitch it always reached when she felt cornered. How dare you accuse me of stealing from my own child? After everything I've sacrificed for you. After all the years I've dedicated to making sure you had everything you needed. What exactly have you sacrificed? Dad's the one working overtime every week. Dad's the one who drives a 10-year-old car so we could save for my education. Dad's the one who hasn't bought himself new clothes in 2 years. What have you sacrificed besides my future for your shopping addiction? That's when she said it. The words that changed everything between us forever. You're acting like your father, not my son. Always questioning, always judging, always making me feel like I have to justify every decision I make. I don't need this criticism from a child who doesn't understand how hard it is to be a mother, how much I've given up for this family. Something crystallized in that moment. I thought of all the times she'd made me feel guilty for asking questions, all the times she dismissed my concerns as childish or unreasonable. I thought of my father, working those extra shifts, believing his sacrifice was building my future, trusting his wife to manage our family's most important investment. You're right, Dad would question this. Dad would demand accountability. Dad would care about my future more than your purse collection. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done enabling your theft. I'm done being your victim. I called my dad from my childhood bedroom that night, sitting on the same bed where I'd done homework and dreamed about college for years. He drove over immediately, and when I showed him the evidence, he was quiet for a long time. I could see the betrayal in his eyes, the same betrayal I felt but magnified by 25 years of marriage and trust. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I trusted her with this and she betrayed both of us. Dad, I need to know. Did you know any of this? Son, I swear to you on your grandmother's grave, I had no idea. She told me she was helping you with textbooks and living expenses. She showed me receipts sometimes, said you needed money for school supplies or emergency car repairs. I thought every withdrawal was going directly to you. The receipts were fake, of course. Or they were real receipts for things she'd bought herself, presented as evidence of money spent on me. The deception was so complete, so calculated, that it took my breath away. My mother tried to control the narrative immediately, calling relatives to tell them that I was being financially abusive and manipulating my father against her. She painted herself as the victim of an ungrateful son who was trying to destroy the family over money. But the evidence was overwhelming, and Dad was furious in a way I'd never seen before. My father was a quiet man, slow to anger, but when he finally exploded, it was devastating. Diane, you stole from our son's future. You lied to me for years. You spent his grandmother's legacy on purses and vacations. You betrayed everything we've worked for as a family. I was going to pay it back. I always intended to pay it back. With what money? You work part-time and spend everything you make on yourself. You haven't saved $1 in 20 years. The marriage didn't survive. Dad filed for divorce 6 months later, citing financial infidelity and breach of trust. But the immediate crisis was my education and how we were going to pay for my remaining semester and graduate school. Dad liquidated part of his retirement account to cover my remaining tuition, and it broke my heart to watch him do it. He was 48 years old, and he just lost a significant portion of his retirement savings to fix what his wife had broken. Marcus, this is my responsibility. I should have been monitoring that account more closely. Dad, you trusted your wife. That's not a character flaw. It is when it costs my son his future. My mother was forced to sell her car and most of her designer purchases to pay back what she could. It wasn't close to the full amount, but it was something. She moved in with Aunt Linda, who made it clear this was temporary and contingent on her getting help for her spending problem. The family fractured along predictable lines. My mother's siblings were split between those who thought I was being too harsh and those who were horrified by what she'd done. My father's family rallied around us, offering support and expressing outrage at the betrayal. It's been 2 years since that confrontation, and I'm still processing the emotional aftermath. I finished my undergraduate degree, though I had to take out loans for graduate school. The debt feels different when you know it shouldn't exist, when you know the money that was supposed to prevent it was stolen by someone who claimed to love you. My father and I are closer than ever, bonded by the shared experience of being betrayed by someone we trusted completely. We talk every week, and our relationship has a depth and honesty that it never had before. There's something about surviving betrayal together that creates an unbreakable bond. My mother has reached out multiple times, wanting to rebuild our relationship and move forward as a family. But her apologies always come with justifications that show she still doesn't understand the full scope of what she did. I know I made mistakes, but I was struggling with depression and shopping was my coping mechanism. I never meant to hurt you. I really thought I could pay it back before you graduated. I had plans to get a better job. I'm your mother. Doesn't that count for something? Don't all the years I took care of you mean anything? The answer is no. Being my mother doesn't give her the right to steal from me. Being family doesn't excuse betrayal. And claiming mental health issues doesn't erase the calculated, deliberate nature of her deception. 6 months after my original post, the consequences of my mother's actions began to catch up with her in ways I never could have anticipated. It started with a phone call from my father's lawyer. "Marcus, there's something you need to know. Your mother is being audited by the IRS." The audit revealed that she'd been claiming educational expenses on her taxes for money she'd stolen from my fund. She'd been taking tax deductions for tuition payments she'd never made, for educational expenses that had actually been spent on her lifestyle. The IRS doesn't take kindly to that kind of fraud. The penalties were severe, over $15,000 in back taxes, interest, and fines. Her wages were garnished, and what few valuables she had left were seized. Suddenly, those designer purses and jewelry pieces weren't looking like such good investments, but the financial consequences were just the beginning. Aunt Linda, who had been housing my mother since the divorce, discovered that the manipulation extended to her as well. My mother had been using Linda's credit cards for emergencies and never paying them back. She'd been taking cash from Linda's purse and lying about it. "I found out when my credit card company called about unusual charges," Linda told me when she called to apologize. "Your mother had been using my card for online shopping and claiming it was for household necessities. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I should have listened to you." Linda kicked her out, and at 54 years old with no savings, bad credit, and tax problems, my mother was finally facing the full consequences of her choices. The revelation of my mother's broader pattern of financial manipulation sent shockwaves through our extended family. Uncle Rick, who had lectured me about forgiveness and family loyalty, called with a very different tone. "Marcus, I owe you an apology. We staged an intervention for your mother last week." The intervention revealed that my mother had been borrowing money from relatives and never paying it back for years, always with sob stories about emergencies or temporary setbacks. She owed my cousin Sarah $3,000 for a car repair that never happened. She'd borrowed $1,500 from my Aunt Bate for medical bills but used it for a vacation. We told her she needs professional help, not just therapy but financial counseling and possibly addiction treatment, Rick explained. We also told her that the family bank is closed until she makes real changes. With nowhere else to turn, my mother's desperation reached new heights. She started calling my father's relatives, people she'd barely spoken to during the marriage, begging for help. My paternal grandmother, who'd never liked my mother, called me after one of these conversations. "Marcus, your mother called me asking for money. She said you'd abandoned her and she was homeless." "Grandma, she's not homeless. She's facing consequences for stealing from me and lying about taxes." I figured as much. She always struck me as dishonest, but I wanted to hear your side before I told her what I really thought. Grandma had apparently given my mother a piece of her mind, telling her that she'd raised a good boy and that my mother had only herself to blame for the situation. My mother's attempts to manipulate me back into her life became increasingly desperate and disturbing. She faked a heart attack to get me to visit her in the hospital, claiming she thought she was dying and needed to make things right. When I overheard her asking the nurse to make sure I saw the discharge papers because she wanted me to know how serious this was, I realized it was just another performance. She recruited relatives to guilt me about family loyalty, having them call me with variations of the same message. She was sorry, family was important, I should forgive and move on. She even had her therapist call me, trying to pressure me into joint sessions. When I refused to respond to her manipulation, she escalated to showing up at my apartment uninvited, standing outside my door with a suitcase, demanding to talk. I called campus security to have her removed. Finally, I wrote her a letter establishing clear boundaries, not to reconcile but to protect myself from further manipulation. Mom, I've received your messages, calls, and visits. I understand you want to repair our relationship, but your approach is making that impossible. The manipulation, guilt trips, and attempts to use other people against me are exactly the behaviors that destroyed my trust in the first place. If you genuinely want to make amends, here's what needs to happen. Take full responsibility for your actions without excuses or justifications. Stop trying to manipulate me through relatives, fake emergencies, or social media. Respect my boundaries and stop showing up uninvited. Make a realistic plan to repay the money you stole. Demonstrate consistent change over time, not just promises. Until these conditions are met, I will not be responding to any attempts at contact. This isn't about punishment, it's about protecting myself from further manipulation. The letter worked. The direct manipulation stopped, though I still heard through the grapevine that my mother was telling people I'd given her an impossible ultimatum and was holding the family hostage. 2 years after I set those boundaries, I received a call that I never expected. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice was one I knew well, though it sounded different, smaller, humbled in a way I'd never heard before. Marcus, this is your mother. Please don't hang up. I almost did hang up, but something in her tone stopped me. She sounded genuinely different, not like the manipulative woman I'd been dealing with for years. I'm calling because I have something that belongs to you, and I want to return it. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a neutral location. I brought my father for support, and we arrived at the coffee shop to find a woman who looked like my mother but somehow diminished. She'd lost weight, her hair was grayer, and she was wearing clothes I recognized from years ago. But the biggest change was in her demeanor. The entitled, manipulative energy that had defined her was gone. "Thank you for coming," she said, not attempting to hug me or force physical contact. "I know I don't deserve your time." She placed an envelope on the table between us. Inside was a check for $8,000 and a letter unlike anything she'd ever written to me. "It's not everything I owe you," she said, "but it's a start. I've been working 2 jobs and living on almost nothing to save this money. I wanted to pay you back before I tried to make any other amends." The letter was a straightforward acknowledgement of what she'd done and the damage it had caused, without excuses or justifications. She acknowledged the theft, the lies, the manipulation of relatives, the identity theft I'd discovered, all of it. "I've been in therapy for 18 months, she explained. Not the performative therapy I tried before, but real work with a therapist who specializes in financial abuse and manipulation. I've learned that I was using you and everyone else to avoid facing my own problems." What struck me most was that she didn't ask for anything. No request for reconciliation, no plea for forgiveness, no attempt to negotiate a relationship. She simply wanted to return what she could and acknowledge the harm she'd caused. "I understand if you never want to see me again," she said. "I understand if you don't trust this gesture. I understand if you think it's too little too late. You have every right to feel all of those things." She told us about the past 2 years, the bankruptcy, the subsidized apartment, the call center job, but also the isolation, the realization that she'd burned bridges with everyone who'd ever cared about her. "I was sitting in my apartment on Marcus's birthday last year, and I realized I didn't have the right to even send him a card. I'd stolen that right along with everything else. That's when I knew I had to change, not to get you back, but because I couldn't live with who I'd become. I accepted the check but made my position clear. I wasn't ready for a relationship and might never be. She could continue making payments through Dad's lawyer, but I didn't want regular contact." She understood. Over the next 2 years, she made regular payments without trying to use them as leverage for contact. When the debt was fully repaid, she sent a simple note. "Debt repaid in full. Thank you for your patience. I hope you have a good life." As I write this from my own home, a small but beautiful place that I bought with money I earned and saved myself, I reflect on what this experience taught me. The college fund my mother stole was meant to secure my future. In a strange way, her betrayal did exactly that, though not in the way anyone intended. It taught me to be financially responsible, to protect myself from manipulation, and to value relationships built on trust and respect. It showed me the difference between love and enabling, between forgiveness and foolishness. My mother's attempt to make amends was meaningful, but it was also the bare minimum of what she owed me. Paying back stolen money isn't heroic, it's basic accountability. Taking responsibility for your actions isn't praiseworthy, it's what adults are supposed to do. I'm proud of the boundaries I set and maintained. I'm proud of refusing to enable her manipulation. I'm proud of choosing my own healing over her comfort. She stole my college fund, but she couldn't steal my future. She damaged my trust, but she couldn't destroy my ability to build healthy relationships. She tried to manipulate me into being her victim, but I chose to be a survivor instead. Some people still say I'm being too harsh, that I should give her another chance now that she's changed. But I've learned that I don't owe anyone access to my life, regardless of their relationship to me or their personal growth. I choose peace over drama, boundaries over manipulation, and self-respect over family obligation. My mother wanted me to stop acting like my father when I demanded accountability. She was right, I was acting like him, valuing honesty and expecting respect. Those are qualities I'm proud to have inherited, and they've served me well. The story ends not with reconciliation or forgiveness, but with peace. My peace, earned through boundaries, maintained through consistency, and protected through self-respect. She said a father would care more when I demanded to know where my money had gone. She was right about that too. A father's love is protective, and my father protected me by supporting my boundaries and refusing to enable her manipulation. I protected myself by walking away from a toxic situation and refusing to be anyone's victim. That's not coldness or cruelty. That's self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever have. The real victory isn't her change or her amends or her apology. It's my choice to protect myself, to demand respect, to refuse to be anyone's victim. That choice has made all the difference.